like button on Facebook, which is exciting. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our first virtual social exchange. A lot of you are familiar faces. Some people I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, and I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone better through these conversations and through the discussion that we have here, and hopefully future discussions. So I'll do a quick introduction for our social exchange. I'm going to go ahead and start our screen share so that you guys can know what to expect today. And then we'll just get started. I think we've got a lot of great things to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to it. So here at Operation New Hope, we started a social exchange a few months ago. And then unfortunately, we got cut short due to COVID. And so like so many of us, we had to rethink the way we not only deliver programming, but also delivering content. And so we've all become more familiar with Zoom and chat and social distancing parameters. And so this is our foray into that endeavor. So I'm Amanda Mahan. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at Operation New Hope. And again, thank you all for coming. We have a really interesting topic today to talk about, which is what is the wealth we lose? I'm trying to frame up the question in terms of are the personal costs and the societal costs of incarceration and all of the ancillary consequences and collateral consequences that occur after people leave incarceration and try to reenter society. So we have two panelists today. We have Linda Joseph. She is our COO, Chief Operating Officer here at Operation New Hope. And we also have Reggie Fullwood. He is a director of our Ready for Work program. So the way it's going to flow is we're going to have each of them give a few minutes of discussion as to the larger societal costs of incarceration and reentry, and then and then also the personal costs and impacts on wealth that incarceration and reentry have on people. And then we're going to open it up for a group discussion at that point. And we do hope that everyone will unmute everybody at that point. Feel free to, if you jump into the discussion, raise your hand. We'll try and moderate as best we can. If you'd rather just type in your communication there in the chat, feel free to use that. Also, during the panelists chat, feel free to use the chat box as well. Submit questions, and we'll hopefully flow the conversation as well as we can. And then we'll have a wrap up. So without further ado, we're just going to move along. We're going to get the conversation started here with a couple questions. And so I would love it if you guys used your chat box. I can't find my chat box here, of course, now that I want it to see everyone's answers. But we'll ask the questions. What is the annual cost to incarcerate an inmate in Florida? So if you want to type that into the chat box, what you think, we've got a lot of different answers coming in. And forgive me if I could find my chat box on the controls. I've got a lot of different screens coming up. So maybe you all can see the chat box and you guys can see what the answers that are coming in, different people's ideas, and getting some nods. So hopefully you guys are seeing what you all think the annual cost to incarcerate is. We're going to dig into that conversation a little bit here. And then the next question we want you guys to kind of respond with is, what is the annual impact of incarceration on the state of Florida's annual budget? So that's something we want to feel free to, throw out some suggestions. A couple $1 million, couple $1 billion. What do you guys think is the cost in the state of Florida? And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Linda up here as the spotlight video, and hopefully that works well. And we're going to go ahead and start the discussion of what is the wealth we lose. Linda, take it away.
Thank you so much. So to start with, I'm going to kind of frame up and talk a little bit about the community and us as taxpayers. So first of all, we have to start with incarceration in the state of Florida is off the charts. So as a nation, the United States incarcerates 25% of the world's incarcerated folks are in the United States, but we are only 25% of the population of the globe. So United States already leads the way, if that was a good thing, in incarceration. But if you look at the rates per 100,000, Florida even beats the country as a whole. So incarceration is definitely a problem. Okay, Amanda.
Oh, great, thanks.
When we think about Florida, what it costs to incarcerate, a couple of you are pretty close. In the state of Florida, they say for Florida Department of Corrections, it's about $20,000 a year to incarcerate one individual. The Vera Institute says that on average, if you look at all state facilities across the United States, is about $31,000. We could spend an entire hour just talking about how this is calculated, because interestingly enough, states obviously want to portray that their costs are less than other states, but there's a lot of stuff below the line. So there's administrative costs, there's healthcare costs, or things that are not included in the $20,000. But suffice to say, it's at least $20,000. Okay, Amanda? So now let's look at the entire impact of the Florida budget to oversee folks. This includes folks that are on probation. There's about 164,000 people across Florida on probation with the Department of Corrections, and there's about 95,000 people incarcerated. So the cost to our annual budget in Florida is $2.3 billion with a B. So what we really want to focus on is not just the cost to the budget, but what the ancillary impact is. So yes, as taxpayers, we help fund the $2.3 billion, but there was actually a really big study done that says there are a lot of ancillary costs. So for every person that's incarcerated, you know, there is divorce that happens. And because people can't stay in a home, property values decrease. There's the cost of child welfare because maybe there's one parent not in the home. There's eviction costs. There is, you know, the criminogenic nature of prison. When you're in prison and you get out of prison, you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which now needs to be treated. So if you take all these ancillary costs that are built up, it actually is for every $1 that is spent in the state budget, you have to times it by 10. So next one. So it's actually the cost to us as taxpayers, all inclusive, is $23 billion a year. So from a community perspective, we definitely care about this. When we think about, you know, what is the wealth that is impacted by this topic, from a community perspective, it's big. So I'm going to turn it over to Reggie, who's going to talk about what is the cost to the individual citizen.
Thank you, Linda. You know, it's interesting. Every week we have orientation here and we bring new clients in, and some of the folks are right out of prison.
Oops, Reggie, I muted you accidentally while I was trying to spotlight you. Would you please unmute yourself? Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button.
No problem at all.
All right, we got Reggie spotlighted now and unmuted. Go ahead, Reggie.
Okay, great. So every week we bring in new clients in for orientation, and some of those people are right out of prison. Some of them have just been affected by the system in some way and are looking for help. And everyone has a consistent story, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you know, when you go to court, you get convicted, you have to pay court fees that are assessed to you. Even if you're innocent, there's still court fees that are assessed to you. Well, think about this. If you go to prison, typically you have to report within a certain time you go to prison. Typically, by then you're not working. So you get these fees that are assessed to you. You're in prison for a year or two. While you're sitting in prison, serving your time, trying to be productive, those fees are building and growing. You get out of prison, now you're looking for a job. You still have those fees hanging over your head on top of trying to live, trying to maybe reconnect with your family, trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And so all that said, the cost is significant. There was a study recently done by the Brennan Center that really captures how the criminal justice system affects people from a financial perspective, and the information is just it's hard to even fathom. The slide here talks really about poverty and how poverty is one of the main reasons for incarceration. And, you know, we all know that, I think hopefully in this kind of conversation, we can be real, and we know that, you know, environment affects your life, and people who come from high poverty neighborhoods tend to commit more crimes. Then we have a system, then we have broken systems within the criminal justice system. The bail system is deeply flawed as well. And so we're dealing with a group of folks who go to prison, get these fines, and think about how you try to maneuver to get your life back on track. It's really tough for a lot of our clients and a lot of people in general. That study I mentioned earlier basically says for a white person who is in prison as a young adult, they lose about $267,000 in lifetime earnings. For a Black person who gets incarcerated as a young adult, they lose about $358,000 in lifetime earnings. And for Latino Americans, they lose over $500,000 in lifetime earnings because of incarceration. The same study was really interesting. They tried to capture, like, for they said that this is one of the first times anyone has ever captured misdemeanors. If you think about a misdemeanor, you typically think, okay, someone with a misdemeanor kind of gets a slap on the wrist and they go about their business. Well, this study said about 45 million Americans, about 14% of Americans, have a misdemeanor conviction. And those misdemeanor convictions have a severe economic impact on your lives, because a lot of employers still look at those and they're disqualifiers for some employers. So, you know, the burden for those who get incarcerated is just, I think it's a lot of folks don't really understand that the fees that build up, the challenge, even if you think about housing, if we can go to the next slide, Amanda, about housing, for example, most public housing, if you have a felony conviction, you can't even get public housing. And how like ridiculous or asinine is that? So public housing is supposed to be to help the neediest of our people. But if I have a felony conviction, in a lot of places, I don't qualify. So where do people with felony convictions go when they get out of prison? Typically, if they don't have a family member to support them, they have to go into some of the worst environments in our cities. You go into that bad environment, crime is right there, drugs are right there. The chances of you recidivating are very high because you've been placed back into a same or worse environment that you came out of. So it's like this cycle, and you know, how do we break the cycle is key. If you look at this slide, it basically captures the fact that, you know, returning citizens face all these barriers: housing, transportation, job skills training. That's sort of where Operation New Hope comes in. We try to, you know, limit or eliminate all those barriers. But, you know, we serve, let's say we serve 500 people in a year. There's still several thousands of folks come out of prison every year and come back to Duval County, for example, that need help. And again, sometimes family members are helpful, but oftentimes folks have burnt bridges with family members and they end up getting back into the cycle. So breaking that cycle is really important. So the excessive punitive nature of our criminal justice system is a major problem that we need to deal with. It's you know, we have to start on the state level and deal with each state individually, but it's a federal issue as well. And there have been some criminal justice reform that's been passed recently, but really we really have to kind of go down into the court system and look at fees and fines. And even I think about your driver's license, for example, and I'll get off my soapbox after I talk about driver's license. So you go to court, you get convicted of whatever the crime is, your driver's license will most likely be suspended automatically. You go serve your time, you get out. Now you have all these fees and fines. You have a suspended driver's license. You got to deal with that. And so there's different groups out there that are trying to help deal with some of these issues and change the laws, but it's mounting. So, you know, when you get out of prison, there's a hole that you're in. And now we haven't even talked about the mental health part of it. You know, the post-traumatic stress syndrome from being locked up, the depression, the stress from having to now get back on your feet, reconnect with society. So it can be a very bleak journey, a very difficult journey for a lot of folks who are returning. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Reggie and Linda, both. That's some good starter information for us to get started in our conversation. So this is the fun part where we figure out how to best facilitate discussion. We've got about 13, it looks like, participants online. So I think we just open it up, and I think we have an honest conversation and share our various perspectives. We all come from different walks of life, and we all come from different organizations and professions. And so I'm really curious to see what we can come up with. So some starter questions, if anyone, if we get stuck, is, does anyone here have any personal or, professional or community experiences in terms of the wealth, how their wealth has been impacted by incarceration? Another question that we might want to consider is, what can we do as individuals? A lot of us are working in organizational roles, but what could we also do on a more personal level to address this issue? And then also, what other organizations are out there working on these problems? So those are some of the things we want to talk about. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully we can all then see everybody's faces, and feel free to unmute yourselves at this point. And we can just jump into the conversation. I'll throw it out there with the first question. Does anyone have any personal or community wealth experience being impacted? Excuse me. Want to jump in with that one? That's fine. We can move on to the.
I can go. I was trying to get unmuted. Okay.
Oh, good. Thanks. Thank you for joining us.
My son, I have been watching him go through this for the last 13 years. He's now 30 years old, and we're from Missouri, and I've lived here for the last 3 years. And he came down here this last June, and within a week of being here, ended up in Duval County. And so when he came out, he was like, "This is it. I'm done. I'm ready to change, Mom. I'm ready to do better." And so I've got him at the Salvation Army right now, and I cry about it. But yeah, I just feel for everybody that can't get themselves dug out of the hole. And so that's what he's doing now at the Salvation Army. But I saw your guys' a commercial on TV about you guys, and I just wanted to learn more about you. So that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing. And I can only imagine, like, the amount of overwhelming just feelings that come when it feels impossible, right? Like, with the amount of barriers, and so hopefully you can find resources and services to connect with, and hopefully this discussion will help start that as well, right?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think too, like what you said is key, is that your son really wanted to make a change for himself for the better. And I think that right there is just so important in the journey to actually being successful in reentry. My daughter's father has been in and out for minor charges since I've known him. And it's just like, he struggles with alcoholism, and then, with substance abuse, there's an element of trust issues on both sides. So, he's back in again, and it's just really hard to have to just kind of let him be alone with his own struggles, so that he can realize when he wants to change. I'll be there to support him. And I think in the past, he even went through some programming and just relapsed and went down another path. So addiction issues are huge in that population, in people going through that cycle.
Yeah.
And if I can jump in for a second, Amanda, if I can jump in for a second, one of the things that we have to fix as a country is we need to stop treating addiction as if it's a crime. a clear solution is like looking at what other countries are doing. So folks who are struggling with addiction, instead of sentencing them to a year or two in prison, find the right programs to sentence them to that so they can really deal with the core issue, right? So if we deal with the core issue, then it eliminates the crime. And so I think that as we're talking about criminal justice reform, those are the types of things that we have to really look at changing. Instead of arresting and convicting people who have drug and mental illness, let's get them in programs that will deal with those issues.
And have the funding for that. I mean, that's one of the other things is that on your horrible screen that showed that Florida was off the charts as far as numbers of incarcerated, we are the lowest funded for mental health and substance abuse services in the entire country. So here you have this astronomical arrest rate and incarceration rate, but very little treatment. And I think that's what needs to come in too, is that, like you said, recognizing that it's a problem and not treating it as a crime, and then getting and making services affordable for individuals who do want help, instead of this having to fight and wait and get on wait lists and things like that, and try and find people that don't have, if you don't have insurance, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of barriers for that too, if they actually do want help.
And so that's why the state of Florida champions the fact that their cost per year is only $20,000 a year. But it's the opposite of what it should be, because they're not spending enough money. People are just coming back in again. And then we end up the highest state with incarceration per 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is great. We're doing a great job, I think. Just want to cheer everyone on. Let's keep it going.
We just need to get the state of Florida to hear our wonderful points and change all the funding and incarceration rates.
Absolutely, because Cindy added to the chat that it definitely takes community to make an impact. So I feel like this is like an effort. This is a way that as individuals, kind of to the next question, like what can individuals do? I think if we do start having these deeper community discussions, right, something is going to grow out of it. So this is a start, and so I'm glad that we're all part of this community right now. But there's also other organizations, and I wanted, if I can spotlight you, Ashley, just for a minute. We have Ashley Thomas from the Florida Fines and Fees that's joined us here today. One of the other organizations that's working to correct a really major issue that Reggie highlighted earlier is the statutory fines that get put onto an individual who goes through the court system that then get attached to your driver's license. So Ashley, would you speak to that a little bit, please? And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for putting this on and for having me here today. We've been working in Florida for about 2 years now, and our mission as an organization is to eliminate fees that are imposed in the justice system and to make sure that fines are more fairly used. Florida, it won't surprise you, is pretty bad when it comes to the number and variety of fines and fees that are imposed on everybody from, a traffic ticket to a misdemeanor to a felony. I mean, there are mandatory costs, hundreds of dollars. I think mandatory minimum costs for a felony charge are over $650. And that's before somebody might be imposed a fine. And that's per charge. Here in Florida, you have to apply $50. It costs you to determine whether or not you can afford an attorney, which is really strange that they charge you for that. And then they charge you for the attorney that everybody believes based on, TV that it's, you're entitled to a free attorney. Like, not really, you have to pay for it. So yeah, I mean, these are just huge issues. Everybody who, is trying to, leave prison and, get reestablished is also facing, like Reggie said, like a series of, hurdles that have been placed in their way. And the driver's license suspension is huge. And we're all here in Florida. We know that you need a driver's license to get anywhere. And Florida actually uses driver's license suspension more frequently to punish people who haven't paid their fines and fees than for people who are dangerous drivers. So that's telling you something right there. And as a community, like, the driver's license suspension should be to make the roads safer, not to punish people for being poor. But that's what ends up happening. So we're working at the state legislature to basically change the laws around the driver's license suspension and stop suspending licenses for unpaid fines and fees. And there's actually a lot of support from, all different political persuasions, business community. They want to see these laws change. We had an alliance with the Truckers Association and Uber and Lyft, and there's just a wide amount of support for this. And so unfortunately, we didn't get it through the legislature this past legislative session, not because of lack of will or, every vote that we had at every committee stop was in favor of our bill. It's just that we ran out of time in the 60-day Florida legislative session. And these things happen, but we're going to try again and hopefully at least stop that practice. And then also, figure out what we can do about these underlying fines and fees that are just holding people back. They're not helping anybody, and they are used to fund government. And we need to just come up with a different way of funding government programs. I mean, there are like 33 different trust funds that 50 cents or $1 goes to fund different programs. And it's just ridiculous.
Thank you, Ashley. That was, thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us. It goes back to the question, what is the wealth we lose? There's the community and individual wealth loss there, in terms of to the individual who loses their driver's license, right? They can't make it to work. So they can't, get the job. And they can't then also earn the money to pay back the fines and fees, right? And so that right there is, just a nonsensical barrier in my mind. And then also, the greater community loss is that we don't have these individuals contributing to society. Employers have fewer options for hires, right? They can only hire people who can get to work, right? And so, it's we then weaken our community even more and limit ourselves by the system that is set up to fail, and it should be changed. So whatever we can do to help you get it changed, like we're here. So
right,
count
and
on us.
it's I agree, Amanda, and I agree. It's like also becomes a public safety issue because it puts people in the position like, well, screw it. I'm just going to get to work whether I have a license or not. I'm just going to drive, and then it's more of a danger then because they're in this desperate spot.
And to that point, then we have, folks who are driving, and if you don't have a, valid driver's license, you can't get car insurance. So there are folks out there driving without car insurance. And then of course, she's right. Like people just continue to drive because you have to, but then you're risking getting arrested again. And then going sort of back into the criminal justice system. And not only that, facing like additional fines and fees for driving to try to get yourself to work or take your kids to school. I've talked to people who have been arrested for driving with a license suspended while they're dropping their kid off at the line at school. Yeah, so, it makes no sense. I was just actually compiling like the fines and fees for, a basic offense of, driving with your license suspended could be upwards of $1,500. So that's for, a very minor offense of, in the grand scheme of things. And it's not about public safety because most likely that person's license was not suspended for a DUI. It was for unpaid fines and fees. If, the percentages, 72% are for unpaid fines and fees. Most likely that's why.
Hey, Amanda, can you put the slide back up that says, what is the cost to the person incarcerated? Yep. There you go. Down one. The go down a few, keep going there, right there. So what I like about this, I don't like it, but what I like about this graph is that it really truly depicts what is happening with income. So for the person who has experienced incarceration, their income is stifled versus the person who never had a brush with the criminal justice system. Look at the difference in potential. And not only is it about income, but it's about paying taxes and, maybe property taxes because you could own a home versus somebody who can't own a home, and paying for car insurance because you can afford car insurance and your driver's license isn't suspended. So it is such a compounding issue. And this slide really shows the difference. We're not talking about $10,000 a year. We're talking about a completely different change in lifestyle. And if you want to have a family and children, you're starting to impact that. And can your children afford to participate in extracurricular activities and go to college? Like, it really, really, really is compounded. So I just wanted to spotlight that one more time, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, no, I think that when I saw that that article, and particularly that image in the article, it was shocking. We're not talking about slightly different income. We're talking and it's $70,000. Like that's two good incomes, two wage earners in a family that, and so it's so limiting and creates, again, that cycle of poverty, which the other slide shows. The cycle of poverty creates the cycle of incarceration, and so if we can figure out a way to interrupt, I feel like that cycle of poverty is the starting place to interrupt mass incarceration. And I also wanted to note that Ashley in the chat box over here, she shared a link to Florida the Fines and Fees Justice Center and their Florida campaign on fines and fees. So we can all get involved in that to help. Thank you, Ashley. And the other thing I wanted to highlight here that I'm not trying to wrap up the discussion, just now that I'm thinking of it, is that we all can connect with each other now. And maybe start networking outside of this meeting. So, should something that resonate with you that someone shared or an idea that they brought up, feel free to reach out and connect. And if you can't connect through the calendar invite where the email addresses are, feel free to reach to me and I'll network between you guys. And then bigger ask too is, we're having these the third Friday of every month. Let's all of us give each other the challenge to bring a friend next time and invite someone to come with us to expand the discussion, right? Because I think this is going pretty well. And I think the more people we have, the bigger force we can create for change. So, but let's keep the discussion going. Those were just some exciting ideas. Does anybody have any other ideas that they wanted to add at this point? Or questions?
Okay, I guess I'll chime in. I just really there's such great information that's been presented that I really just wanted to listen as much as possible and really kind of hear from everyone, and also just understand some of the different organizations that are out there. I'm somewhat new to Jacksonville in that I moved up here end of last year, and then found myself by mid-March having to kind of work remotely, and so it's just been something that I haven't really had a chance to really, meet people in Jacksonville and understand the different organizations and everything like that. So I work in the field of developing restorative justice programs, which are, looking at alternatives rather than additions to prosecution, where, trying to divert cases out of these systems where, like everyone's kind of been saying, they're cyclical. It's something that, whether or not, even if, adjudication's withheld, they're still slapped with fines and fees that, really impact the most vulnerable populations in our city, in our states, in our country, in the world. And so really, it is something that, we're primarily working on juvenile and, adult diversion cases. And then obviously there are other areas where restorative justice can be used, things like, dialogue and letter banks and other things that primarily focus on healing and really just trying to allow the parties to be able to kind of share the impact of what's been going on. But really, with the diversion programs, it's about strengthening communities. And so, like I said, trying to focus on the strengths of these individuals and figure out a way to resolve and repair the harm, but without, like I said, requiring further involvement from the courts or the criminal justice system. So Obviously, just knowing, what other organizations out there are trying to, like I said, are interested in like processes such as that, but also, what they're doing. It's something that over the last, couple months, finding out more about what Operation New Hope's been doing and following, on social media, I think has been great. And so obviously, anything else that any way that I can help or learn more about these processes, I really just want to learn as much as possible. So
Thanks for that, Nick, and welcome. Welcome to Jacksonville. Welcome to Operation New Hope too. And I see that Ashley's offering to connect offline. That sounds great. So hopefully you guys can find some synergy in the work you guys are doing, and that's the other exciting part about the social exchange, right? Is that we can network and we can find what strengths we can offer each other and to the missions that we're trying to serve. So, and the populations we're trying to serve, that sort of thing. So, great.
Something that Nick said just made me think of something else to mention is, these costs are not just imposed on folks in the adult system. He was talking about juvenile diversion, and here in Florida, like, kids who are, facing juvenile adjudications, young kids, they're assessed fines and fees the same as any adult is. And so these are kids who then are starting out their adult life owing a debt to the state of Florida that is going to follow them probably for the rest of their lives. And it's really, tragic that we're doing this to kids, especially in a system, the juvenile justice system is ostensibly supposed to help, not punish so much as rehabilitate, but yet we're, saddling kids with tremendous amounts of debts before they're, even old enough to vote. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for adding that. It seems daunting, right? Yeah. Goodness. Does anyone else want to chime in? Have anything to add regarding the wealth we lose in our communities, or anything that we miss?
Amanda, I do want to add one of the it's great having these conversations. I think they always lead to, okay, what are some of the solutions? And it's we need to change laws and policy change. One of the biggest areas of policy change, we talk about driver's license and the fees and fines, but really the ban the box movement. And I think we had picked up a lot of momentum with ban the box. I think COVID derailed a lot of stuff, but I think banning the box and getting more employers to look past people's past is really important as well, as we're looking at poverty and breaking the cycle. And so we've been successful here with attracting employers and selling employers on the fact that, folks can have a record and still be awesome employees. And time after time, our folks have shown that. But I think as a group or people who are interested in these policy changes, we also have to continue pushing ban the box types of programs or initiatives.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely a good solution. Any other ideas on solutions? Some takeaways, some homework we can all start working on?
Advocacy, that sounds like such a broad term, but I feel like I need to join every advocacy and go back to political science 101 and find out about working in legislature and all that kind of stuff. Like when Ashley was talking about pushing the bill through and everything like that, I'm like, yes, we just need to all sign up for everything and become a part of it. And but for real, I think a lot more advocacy and getting involved in whatever we can really does make a difference. Because like you said, if we just tell one friend about how wonderful this exchange was, what about all the other messages that we have out there? you know?
Well, and in addition to advocacy, the election is coming up. We can all vote, right? We can all be advocates with our vote and encouraging others to vote. And so the question was, what other organizations are working in this space? I'm sure a lot of people on here are already familiar with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, the FRRC. They're working really hard right now. They got Amendment 4 passed on the last election ballot. Overwhelmingly here in the state of Florida, obviously we've had some hurdles to getting it implemented since that, but they're working to overcome those hurdles too. They've raised millions of dollars to help pay off people's help people pay off fines and fees so that they can avoid the poll tax, if you will, like to get signed up to vote, right? So hopefully we'll see some sort of change in the amount of people that show up to vote in this election. And I think that would be a really encouraging thing in this state of unrest, not only like health unrest and social unrest, that if we saw more people becoming advocates by voting, I think that'll give us that hope, right? That I think we also desperately need right now. That's my soapbox.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a record number of people who vote this time around. Like, I think we're going to radically swing the other direction as far as like people getting out and voting and everything. So I agree.
Awesome. So get your grandma out there and vote. Get your teen friends that are 18 out there and vote. Registration to vote is in just 2 weeks ends. So make sure that you're registered to vote and make sure we push registration. We only have a few more days here to get registered to vote for this election. So I encourage everyone to maybe just send out some text messages or use your social media channels to tell everyone to register to vote. We don't have much more time.
I think that's a really good point that Gretchen made about advocacy, because and the fact that it takes collaboration, because there are those of us out there that feel like really passionate about making change and finding solutions, but maybe disengaged a little bit politically because it feels like it's so big and overwhelming and like change happens so slowly. Like my personal feeling is like, nothing is really happening unless we show them that it actually works first, and then go to them like, hey, it's working, let's make this change, like sign here. But it takes people that have those connections in politics, connection to people. So doing this right here and having these conversations and expanding your network to people that are interested in that is like, this is it. This is really what it's all about.
Thank you. Yeah. Good. Well, I agree. I couldn't agree more. So that's my big ask: is everybody bring a friend next time, or 5 friends. So that I'm going to bring up my screen again, and I'm going to show you what we have on tap for our next social exchanges. We're all excited about it here. We are looking forward to a series on criminal justice reform because change is necessary. As we were putting together our slide deck for this discussion, that's what we kept saying is we got to change this, right? Something's got to give. So what are the ways, what are the avenues, if you will, the paths to change? And we see it as 3 main channels, right? Sentencing reform. Ashley was highlighting that with her fines and fees. And maybe Ashley would want to be one of our panelists for that discussion. We can have a conversation. And, sentencing reform. So that'll be in October 16th. Join us for that discussion and bring some friends. If you know people that are working in sentencing reform, send them my way and have them join our conversation. Then we're talking about, so, before people go to prison as a sentencing reform, while incarcerated, what can we be doing behind the walls to make reforms so that the time spent there is more about rehabilitation and opportunities rather than just punitive. We all, I think, can agree that we have to have rules and regulations and consequences in place for society to be balanced, but there's a lot of other cultures and societies that do a way better job at rehabilitating people who have broken laws. And that helps ensure that they don't break more laws in the future and recidivate, right? So the second discussion we're gonna have is on improving rehabilitation behind the walls, and that's on November 20th. I hope you guys can come and bring 2 or 3 friends to that one. And then the third idea, third channel or pathway to reform is what we're doing here at Operation New Hope. It's reentry, right? Because we firmly believe that when we reduce the amount of collateral consequences that a person faces upon reentry, then they'll be less likely to return, right? So let's set a second chance in motion and find a new pathway for reentry, and that's what we want to talk about December 18th. So we will do virtual format for the next 3 series to help physically distance everyone. Hopefully we'll have a little more hope for a future where we can all do this in face-to-face again after that. But that's our next 3. I've got them up on our website. Same process, RSVP. When you RSVP, I'll send you the calendar invite that with the Zoom link. Feel free to share that with your network, the website, and have people RSVP, please, and join the discussion. I think this was a good first step at doing this. I think the conversation flowed great, and I would love to have more voices and more perspectives joining us. So does anybody want to add anything at this point? Any questions? You all have my email address. Feel free to email me anytime. Reach out. Let's keep the network going, right? We can have this discussion continue offline. I think at Facebook Live, so go ahead and share that with your networks too. Go on our Facebook page and share it out and invite other people that way so they can see that this is a really rich and meaningful discussion we're doing here. And hopefully we'll see you all again real soon. I'm so thankful for everyone coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.